Okay, well, that was exciting. We're gonna wait for people to get back on. Sorry about that, guys. Our internet apparently just went out for a blip.
Kicked us off of everything.
Yeah, kicked us out. Yeah, my whole computer shut down. My whole Chrome did, actually. That was weird. So I'll do my best. I'll try to splice these videos together.
You want me to share the direct?
Hi, whoever joined back in. I just want you to share this. Yeah, this link on the Facebook pages.
Got it.
Okay, we're going to try to get as many of you back as we can. It's not NAMA if there isn't some technical difficulty.
It started so well.
It did.
At 8.
It did. It was going so perfectly. Why don't I see a comment from you on the Patreon?
I don't know. Reload because I
Okay.
commented a bunch. And your phone was making noises.
Okay. So we've got one person back, but no one else. Check the main Patreon post feed. Okay, we got 2 people back. Good.
All right, we can almost start again.
Yeah. Sorry about that, guys. I'm going to go ahead and start answering the
we got to finish reading
that question. Yeah, I'm basically done reading it. So there are things I like about it and things I don't like. The thing I like about it, we'll start there, is you should be thinking of your competitor as the CO. That is who you're competing against, or even better, or depending on how you are as a person, competing against the challenge of the day, right? Which is set by the CO. Okay, I prefer seeing myself as competing against the CO because the way I compete is very playful, and so I like to tease the CO and sometimes, and do things like that. But the CO is your enemy, not your fellow competitor, okay, and not your dog for sure. I think a lot of people go into trial as if they're competing against their dog, like their dog is out to get them, and they need to make sure that they don't get tricked by their dog, and that's a really bad way of going into a trial. So that is correct. What I don't like, and I'm not even against being smart about where COs are going to place hides and not going to be placing hides to a point. I think when you're trying to get the fastest time, you're trying to do this and that, okay, I got it. But you will hurt yourself if you, 1, assume a hide can't be somewhere. That will ruin you, okay? And 2, if you try to anticipate where the CO is going to set a hide, that's a bad thing to do. What you should do is say, the hide could be anywhere. I want the fastest time possible, so I'm going to check my high priority areas first. But don't try to say, well, this CO always sets chairs, and this CO always sets a wheel well, and this CO does...
Yeah, or drag your dog halfway across the room instead of searching the room as you go, because you don't know. There are so many places the CO could have put that hide in that room that betting on anything is a bad move, even if it stuck out to you.
Well, and to me, I don't care about that as much as it's disrespectful to the dog to do the searching for them.
Yes.
Let the dog do the searching, and you come in and be their advisor and help them to embody their searching. But don't take over for them. What's the point? For me, what's the point in doing it if that's what you're going to end up doing?
There have been so as someone who sets hides all the time, of course, every room I go into for a walkthrough, I'm thinking, ooh, that's a spot for hide. Ooh, that's a spot for the hide. And I work hard to turn that off or not listen to it too much, because if I over focus on something, then I'm going to second guess my dog if they do alert on it. And it's not worth it. It's not worth letting that seep into my head and take over my search strategy instead of letting my dog work and listening to them unbiasedly. And the thing about whoever's this question was about mirrored hides with a chair hide here and then a chair hide there. That's not uncommon. They're a lot of fun. I've had like identical benches, one room to the next and things like that. That is a way of messing with the competitor's head. So don't let it get to you. Don't let anything the CO could do, setting the same hide 6 times today, having all threshold hides, having no threshold hides. Just don't let that get to you. And then you'll have your better performances.
Yeah.
To me, it's like, especially at NW3 and above, just don't let the mind game get to you.
I think, though, there's like a really fuzzy line. It's not a clear line because, for instance, in a vehicle search, we know it's going to be on a vehicle, so should you let this dog search off the vehicle? Yeah, probably. Are there times where you should redirect the dog back to a vehicle? Yes, probably. And should you probably not call an alert off of a vehicle? Yeah, that's a generally good rule.
Or outside of the search area.
Yeah. But when you take that into an interior, right? It's like you've got an interior and it's chairs and tables. Is the hide most likely going to be on a chair or a table? Yes. Is there a chance it could be on a wall? Yes. Should you redirect the dog to search the chairs? Maybe.
And like for me, I hate setting chair hides. I find them boring and annoying.
Sometimes that's all you have.
That doesn't mean I'm never going to set one in trial. So just because you know about that about me doesn't mean you can say, oh, my dog's alerting on a chair, I better not call it. That would be silly. Maybe it's my only option. Maybe it's the best option in that room for the pass rate that I want.
If it allows you to be a more efficient handler, great. But if it puts you in a position where you're disagreeing with your dog in any way, where your dog's saying it's here and you say it can't be, or your dog's saying it's not there and you say it has to be, then it's a totally bad thing.
Yeah. And
that can be subtle. It doesn't have to be in the moment of alert. It could be that my dog wants to follow their nose this way, and I'm saying, no, let's work the chairs. That to me is already borderline of a bad thing. Like I said, there are times where I redirect my dogs, but you have to do it with some humility that the dog is really the one who knows what they're doing.
Yeah. And, the way they list things in this question or in this post, CO, hide, steward, judge, depending on your trial. So if it's an AKC trial, your judge and your CO are the same person. But if it's an NACW trial, your CO is the one who set the problem, who, picked the search areas, set the hides, created the test. The judge had nothing to do with that. They want to say yes because you found the hide. They're not actively against you, unless there's some crazy mean judge. But in general,
which happens.
it occasionally happens. But in general, they're really rooting for you. And I don't think it helps you to come and go, that judge is evil and they want to say no to me.
I don't think that about my competitors either. I don't think when I compete with my family in Monopoly that they're evil. No. But I do see them as my adversaries or my rivals or whatever you want to think. I think setting an adversarial target that allows you to push yourself to your limit is a good thing, as long as it doesn't make you focus on them to blame them for what is bad going on around you. Instead, let them motivate you to be a better handler.
Yeah, like when people come out at the end of the day and say, oh, the CO set bad hides. Like that's a bullshit response to the end of your trial.
Yep.
Most likely you made some mistakes. Maybe there were some hides you weren't ready for. Maybe things were harder than you expected. But you can't put all of that on the CO and, say that it's not your responsibility. But to go to the, end of this about
knowing the rules.
I 100% think people should know the rules. You don't need to obsess over the rules. You don't need to tie your training to the rules and only train to the rule book.
Well, and the other thing is,
know your parameters so you don't make dumb mistakes.
Well, and the other thing is, if you've never had a judge or CO set something that's outside of the rule book, just wait. It's going to happen to you someday. And are you going to be the person who said, well, that's not fair because you dragged your dog off of a hide that they found?
Yeah.
Or are you going to be the person who said, wow, I got it, even though that was technically outside the rule book?
Or there have been day of rule changes that have been legal, of like letting people choose to go off leash for containers, which most of the people had never practiced because it wasn't within the rules. And they missed an opportunity to potentially do a lot better in that search if they had trusted their dog to go off leash and not have to deal with some wonky leash handling because there were a ton of pillars in the room. And that's why they were allowing people to go off leash.
Yep.
So I definitely think it's worth knowing the rules well enough that you don't, just make dumb mistakes by not knowing them.
Yep.
All right, enough on that.
Go ahead and delete that one.
Okay.
Okay, so let's go to the top. I don't know how we skipped that one. With the new rules coming into effect for NACSW about different multiple search options, are there any new or specific training strategies or goals that you would recommend?
To explain the question a little bit more.
So yeah, we posted this on Patreon. If you haven't seen it, check it out. NACSW released a major rule change. It changes a lot of things at a lot of levels. For example, you have to do all your RTs before entering NW1. At NW3 are the most significant changes. There are going to be 3 of a search, but not necessarily interiors. It might be 3 vehicles, might be 3 containers, might be 3 exteriors. We don't even really know if it could be 3 of different searches, like 2 exteriors and 2 vehicles. I think it could be 2 and 2. Yeah, or 2 and 2 and 2.
Yeah.
Yeah, right?
I think so. I'm pretty.
I don't know. But anyways, yeah. So
6 searches total.
Yeah, 6 searches total. So those are some pretty. Oh, also the blank search could be any one of those searches, not just an interior. Honestly, if you were training under me before, then this shouldn't feel different. Then you should have always been training, understand that you are clearing search areas. You are not looking for odor. So you treated every search as if it was clear every single time you go in, and you cover your search area and then you leave. So if you're not doing that, then that's the main thing I would say is treat every search as blank and focus on covering your search area rather than finding hides. Okay, if your goal is to find hides, you will find them whether they are there or not. If you're covering the search area, you will find all the hides that are there if they are there, and you won't if they aren't, because you'll just be moving to the next area.
And I think it's like 2 vehicle searches, 2 exteriors.
Honestly, I think it's going to be easier.
2 interiors,
I think it's going to be significantly easier for most people. And so if you maintained your training standards before, then it's going to be even easier, because like when they took out luggage, that made it NW3 easier, and now they're making NW3 in my mind easier again. So you should be more than prepared.
But for people who have, like, if you have a fear of container searches or a fear of exteriors, you may have to tackle that in a little bit better way, because you can't say, oh, well, I only have one of those and I'll just get through it. And because most people find interiors easier than the other searches. You have to really buckle down and work those out.
So one clarifying question we had for this one is, how do they have time for 6 searches in a day of Elite? First off, that's an NW3 rule. I don't actually know if there are rules at Elite of how many searches you're allowed to have or not allowed to have.
It's 3 to 5.
3 to 5? Okay.
But I've had 4 and 5.
Yeah. So, I mean, and I'm sure you could ask if you want to do 6 speed searches, you could probably do that in a day, although it would not be fun for a score room.
And the way that they can break up Elite search is totally different. So you can have like a can't go back search. It's really like 3 searches all by itself.
Yeah.
Like one of my searches at Summit was 3 separate barns, and it was one search. So it was a 6-minute total, but it was really like 3 separate barn searches. And part of how they get through it in a day is that they just let in far fewer competitors. They only let in like 28 or 30 competitors for Elite. But they also balance different time limits. So like you might have one search of the day at Elite that's like 6 minutes, and then one that's 1 or 2 minutes. And then some, in the middle. So, you're not doing necessarily all really long searches.
But also, technically speaking, if we had enough judges, we could run a lot of searches in a day. Basically, how many searches could your dog do in a day? Your dog could probably do 10, 12, 15 searches in a day. If we had 15 judges and you just went from one judge to the next, we could do that. Not that would ever happen or would ever be a good idea, but you could make it work time-wise. But when you're trying to make things work with just 2 judges, then we limit how many searches there are going to be.
And like financially, it wouldn't make any sense to have a whole bunch of judges, either for the judges or for the hosts or anybody. Yeah. But yeah, that's actually why they have the limits that they do for the different, like whatever it is, 45 for NW1 and 30-ish for Elite, and the different ones in between, is so that they can fit everything in a day and it not be like a 12-hour trial.
Yep.
And over time, trials have gotten more efficient and times have gotten more efficient, and so that's why they have increased the number of competitors slowly.
Yeah, I've always believed that you should train so that your dog would perform well in almost any version of any rule book for the sport you can imagine. So when a new venue comes out and they have different games or they have different things. So I train my dogs and handlers to be very versatile, to think on their feet, to change as needed. And if you do that, then you shouldn't be changing much when a new version of the rule book, or here's another way of putting that. If the version of the rule book comes out and you feel like you have to change your training was already flawed to begin with. And it was only pointed out flaws. It hasn't changed anything.
Yeah, like one of the scariest for a lot of people is blank containers with food distractions, the potential of that. And I understand why people find that scary, but I actually think that's kind of fun and exciting and breaks things kind of out of the mold a little bit, and should absolutely be something people were already training for.
Absolutely. So we've one more question left. Make sure you're commenting if you want to see another question asked before we close out. We're just going to briefly go over this one because I think I want Natalie to do a bigger video on this topic and maybe release a cheat sheet for you guys. But
borrow somebody else's cheat sheet and give that to you.
Yeah. Something they want us to talk about the differences between the different nose organizations. That she says all the stuff she can find are rules and regulations, not just a basic outline, which is what she's looking for. And since Natalie is a USCSS judge and an AKC judge, I'll let her kind of take it from there.
I need to look for it, but I think that Scentwork University has a cheat sheet on this. I need to ask Diana, but if I find it, I'll post it for you guys. But, they all have some sort of basic similarities and then little tweaks. So like NACSW, your basic trial has interior, exterior container vehicle, but then you have element trials that break out just one of those at a time. So you have like 4 container searches in a day. And then it changes a bit at Elite and Summit. USCSS has the same 4 basic searches for their sort of classic trials, but then they also have games. And so they'll often have 5 searches in a day, 4 classic and then a game. But sometimes they have select trials that just have 2 and a game, and there's some flexibility in how you can do things. And you accrue. So in NACSW, you're basically, with a few exceptions, you have to get everything on the day and then you get a title. With some element trials and with the new NW3 rules, you can kind of add together a couple high enough scores for a title over 2 trials. In USCSS, you can accrue individual cues in a search and then get titles. But if you get everything in one day, then you can get a trial that way as well. AKC is similar to USCSS in that way that you can that you accrue points or you accrue cues for individual searches. You can't get a title in a day with them. And they have.
And these kinds of differences, they're useful to know, but they're most important. Like you have to know yourself as a competitor. Mm-hmm. So for me, picking up a ton of ribbons on a day or being able to keep cues is not super important to me. I like going out and competing with my dog. I would do it whether I got cues or not. I have more fun at fun days and special events than I do at trials usually. So the ribbon isn't important to me. And the ribbon that comes with being able to do everything on one day actually almost holds value for me because it actually marks something that's really difficult to achieve.
Yeah, to me, that's a lot more valuable as well.
But that's not how everyone feels. Some people some people get burnt out because they don't get that ribbon until every 10 trials or something like that they're looking for. And so I get that.
Yeah. AKC has a little bit different elements. They have interior, exterior, container buried in their scent division, and then they have a handler discrimination division that's separate but kind of combined. And they move up kind of similarly through the levels, and then their detective class is kind of equivalent to an element trial if it's just one search in a trial, one big search. And then there are other small nosework organizations. Well, there's UKC, which isn't necessarily small, but you don't have them very many places. And I'm not super familiar with their parameters, but I know that they're quite different in some ways than the kind of other main organizations. And there are some on the East Coast in Canada and even around the world that all have, sort of basic similarities and the kinds of things you'll search. Although the odors they use, like in Europe, are quite different than the ones they use here because they, at least in parts of Europe, they're water-based instead of oil-based. And so that and it changes the way they end up setting the hides because they refresh them regularly instead of just setting them at the beginning of the day and leaving them the whole day. But one of the biggest differences that people need to be careful of when they're competing in a variety of venues is odor thresholds. UKC, my understanding is, has fairly low odor threshold. USCSS is sort of, I would say, just lower than NACSW. And then AKC is significantly higher odor threshold than NACSW. And so if you're competing in multiple venues, or even if you're just competing in one, it's really important to know how odor is created and set so that you're training for the right things and the right variety of odor thresholds, so that you like, if you've only trained really low odor thresholds and then you go do an AKC trial, your dog is going to try to work the odor, but it's probably going to take them so long because it's this new odor picture that they're not going to be able to do it in the right amount of time for trial. Or you might get an alert that's significantly far from odor enough that you get a no because they aren't used to driving to source with such a super, super strong odor. So just be careful with practicing with the different odor thresholds. That's all I have to say about that for now, until I find that cheat sheet for you guys.
Yeah, so maybe we'll put a video up on that hopefully next month and see where we go from there. So I think that's basically all our questions. Anything you want to add? No? I think
I don't think so.
Yep, this has been a good episode aside from the blip in the middle. We had fun answering your questions. These are some kind of bigger questions than normal. Start submitting your questions for next month. If you have something you'd like us to answer about nose work or dog scenting ability in general, let us know. I want to put this out here as well. If you're at the $20 level, 15 or 20 or higher, that you get free video lessons with us or video reviews. So make sure you're sending those to us, and we'll get them done for you. Because
you guys are, spending that money. We want, you guys to be utilizing the rewards of those tiers.
Absolutely.
So, we hope that you do take advantage of that. And if you don't like videoing yourself, then you can, and emailing that, you can do the live lesson. And technically you're still on video, but you don't ever have to watch it if you don't want to.
And if you're a member, or if you're watching this and you're not a member of our Patreon, and if you enjoyed us, feel free to help us out by supporting us at $1 a month. You get access to all of our video lessons here. And if you like this and you're already a supporter, or you liked it and you're not a supporter, feel free to share this. This is a free thing we do for anybody who's interested in nose work. So share this with your friends and let them know that we exist. Other than that, thank you guys so much, and we'll see you guys next time.
Thank you.